All right. She won't be back until around 5 in the evening, so take your time. That voice belonged to my husband. He should be at work. Who on earth has he brought home? Today I suddenly had to work from home, so he probably doesn't realize I'm inside the house. I felt guilty, but curious about my husband's suspicious behavior, I decided to listen in. You're a terrible husband, bringing me here while Susan is away. What are you talking about? You're the one betraying your best friend to have fun with me. I was shocked to hear these voices from the living room and went blank. What does this mean? Why can I hear my husband and best friend's voices? And fun with me, what are they talking about? My mind went blank, but before I could sort things out, they embraced each other. I was too stunned to speak, but I couldn't let this go. I quietly opened my room door and peeked into the living room from the hallway without them noticing. They were so focused on what they were doing that they didn't notice me at all. I stuck my head out of my room and filmed them with my smartphone. This would be incontrovertible evidence for the divorce and for a certain revenge I planned. Maybe 30 minutes passed. Hello? Hello. I just arrived. Upon receiving that call, I quietly left my room and opened the door quietly. Then, the next moment. My name is Susan, a 30-year-old living alone and working in an office. After graduating high school, I couldn't afford college and started working. I've experienced various jobs, but finally settled in my current stress-free company. I don't earn a lot, nor live luxuriously, but being able to live normally was best for me. Besides, I found fulfillment in things other than money. Hey! Sorry to keep you waiting. The meeting with the client took longer than expected. Don't worry, I wasn't waiting that long. Then, shall we go? Today's my favorite place, and we're off tomorrow, so let's drink the night away. I wasn't married, but I had been dating someone for about 6 months, and my personal life was quite fulfilling. He was a regular office worker, so neither of us earned a lot, and our dates weren't extravagant. We'd go to a regular bar, drink, or relax at each other's places on days off, just like any normal couple, but that's why we could live happily. You know, you should think about getting married soon. You're past 30, it's gonna get tougher. Yeah, I know. But if I bring it up, it might seem like I'm rushing him, and he doesn't seem opposed to marrying. That's good then, but women have a harder time finding someone as they get older, that's why I'm worried. One day, during lunch with my high school best friend, the topic of marriage came up. Of course, being over 30, I was anxious. If I couldn't marry my current boyfriend, maybe I wouldn't be able to marry anyone. I'm not particularly beautiful or wealthy. But I wanted to avoid rushing him into marriage, being careful. He seemed serious about our relationship, and I believed he had his own timing. So, I waited for him to propose. Another 6 months passed. On my birthday, he invited me to a fancy restaurant. Last year, we had a party at home, so I was a bit surprised at this lavish celebration. It was a dress code restaurant, so I dressed up, did my makeup, and went to the restaurant. He came straight from work, in a suit. But he seemed different, his hair perfectly styled, giving off a good vibe. Thinking about how much he was celebrating my birthday made me feel warm inside. Thanks for coming today. And about your present. Could you accept this? He said, handing me a small box. Could it be a ring? I do like jewelry, maybe he bought a ring from my favorite brand. A ring. Will you accept this as my promise of a future together as husband and wife? He asked, opening the ring box while looking into my eyes, and proposed to me. Thinking back, it's a bit embarrassing, but I remember being so happy that I cried. Finally, I can get married too. Of course, I wasn't dating him with the sole goal of getting married. Even without marriage, he's genuinely a good person, and I thoroughly enjoyed our relationship. However, given my age and practical reasons, I did want to get married sooner rather than later. That's why I was overwhelmed with emotion when I could finally tie the knot with my beloved. Yes! That night, I immediately called my best friend Kelly to share the news of my engagement. Kelly was as happy for me as if it were her own joy. Soon after, we set a wedding date. Though it was a small ceremony, every friend who attended was smiling and congratulating us. Since his apartment was a bit larger in terms of layout, we decided to start our life together in his place. We agreed to split living expenses and to save for the future in my husband's account. Neither of us were extravagant spenders, and we aimed to maintain our previous standard of living, so money was never an issue. We lived a modest life, ensuring to have a special dinner out once a month to maintain our bond as a couple. As we continued this lifestyle for 1, 2, then 3 years, our marriage seemed stable. However, gradually we began to respect each other less. Well, to be honest, it wasn't mutual disrespect, but rather he stopped respecting me. "Hey, I'm not asking you to do the dishes, but could you at least soak them in water after eating? Otherwise, they dry up and become hard to clean. I'm off on weekends and get home at a regular time, so you should be able to handle the housework. I'm tired from work." I get that you're tired from work, but a little cooperation would help. That's not the point. It's natural for you to do the housework. Don't you know that, even after being married? What era is he living in? Back in the day, men worked and women were housewives. If he's talking about those times, I may understand his point. Or if I were a full-time housewife not working at all, catering to some of his whims would be part of my job. But first of all, we're both working. Sure, I earn less in my admin job. But we split all living expenses, and we spend the same amount. The extra money becomes our personal allowance. Shouldn't we split the housework then? I've been handling more chores when he works on Saturdays or stays late, but there's no appreciation for that. Because I'm a woman isn't a reason to do all the housework. Lately, he's not even doing the bare minimum. Laundry left where it's taken off, dirty dishes left on the table. All he needs to do is soak the dishes. I'm not asking him to wash them. For laundry, just putting it in the basket is enough. But he's too lazy to do even these simple tasks. Think about me too. Just soaking the dishes or putting laundry in the basket doesn't take much effort. Doing just that would cut my workload by more than half. I'm not asking you to do the chores, just the basics. If you're bothered by dishes after I eat, just clean them up yourself. Seriously. You lack the care a wife should have for her husband. I shouldn't have married you. I shouldn't have married you. Those words from my husband left me speechless. There are things you can and can't say, right? In these 3 years, I've been frustrated with my husband countless times. But I never said I regretted marrying him. Isn't there a saying, familiarity breeds contempt? Doesn't he know that? From that day on, our relationship worsened, and I lived with increasing stress. Can you listen? Lately, everything's just been so irritating. I know it's not easy, but maybe divorce is the answer? Well, we don't have kids, so maybe. But I'm scared I won't be able to remarry if we do divorce. I understand what you're saying, but continuing this marriage doesn't seem right either. Maybe it's time to draw the line. Lately, I've found myself venting to my best friend Kelly more and more, and even though I knew it was unrealistic, the thought of divorce began creeping into my mind. Of course, being in my late 30s, I think the chances of remarrying if I divorce now are slim to none. I don't have much money, and I'm just an ordinary woman in her late 30s with a divorce under her belt. There's this fear that no one would want someone like me, that uncertainty was there. But even if I tried to improve our marriage, it would be futile if my husband wasn't interested. I feared I would just keep getting more stressed and eventually lose it, but thankfully, venting to Kelly kept me from bottling up too much stress. The turning point came about a month later. As usual, I was preparing to go to work when I got a call from my boss. There was an outbreak of an infectious disease in the office, and those who could work from home were instructed to do so. Since I had a computer at home and could log into my company account, my work would be the same whether at home or the office, so I decided to work from there. Around noon that day, I heard the front door open. All right. She won't be back until around 5 p.m., so take your time. That voice was my husband's. He was supposed to be at work. Who on earth had he brought home? I usually left for work later than my husband and used the train, so it wouldn't be strange for my bike to be at home. I always kept my shoes in the shoe cabinet, so he probably didn't realize I was in the house. Though I felt guilty, I couldn't help but be curious about my husband's actions. Who had he brought home, and what did he mean by "take your time until I returned"? I decided to eavesdrop on my husband's suspicious behavior. "You're a terrible husband, bringing me here while Susan is away. What are you talking about? You're the one betraying your best friend to have fun with me." I was shocked to hear the voices from the living room and went blank. What does this mean? Why can I hear my husband and best friend's voices? And fun with me, what are they talking about? Thinking calmly, it was clear at this point that my husband and best friend were having an affair. But I believed my husband wouldn't cross such a line, and more than anything, I thought my best friend wouldn't betray me. No, I wanted to believe that. However, reality is cruel. Before I could sort out my thoughts, they embraced each other. I suppressed my breath and listened to their voices, and after some time, I accepted the reality. These people, they're not human. Consumed by desire, beasts. Thinking this way made me feel a bit relieved and allowed me to regain my composure. But I couldn't let this slide. I quietly opened my room door and peeked into the living room from the hallway without them noticing. They were so engrossed in what they were doing that they didn't notice me at all. I stuck my head out of my room and filmed them with my smartphone. This would be solid evidence for the divorce and also necessary for a certain revenge I planned. Maybe 30 minutes had passed. Hello? Hello. I just arrived. Upon receiving that call, I quietly left my room and opened the door quietly. Then, the next moment. Hey! What the hell are you doing here? Huh? Why are you here? That doesn't matter right now. Answer me. Why are you cheating here? Explain. I think she was really surprised, but in the midst of her affair with my husband, her own husband burst into yelling. Yes, I had filmed my husband and my best friend's girlfriend cheating and sent it to her husband. We weren't close, but we had a connection as the spouses of best friends. He replied immediately when I contacted him, and since they were still in the act, I had him come to the scene. I was the one who contacted him. It's a bit weird to be committing such betrayal at home, don't you think? Or maybe you have a habit of doing this. When I appeared from behind, both of them were shocked. They must not have expected me to be there. With their spouses appearing before them, I think they were in a state of panic. They were speechless, looking at each other, trying to make sense of the situation, but I wasn't going to give them that time. I decided to let out everything I was thinking. Don't think you can do something like this and get away with it. Betraying someone and acting like nothing happened. I won't let you get off that easily. Why are you even here? Weren't you supposed to be at work? What does that matter right now? Don't change the subject. Before asking about me, why don't you explain why you're cheating with my best friend? As I cornered them with these questions, both my best friend and husband fell silent. They must be aware that what they're doing is wrong. Whether they're unable to grasp the situation or their minds aren't working, thinking that staying silent will solve everything is a huge mistake. As adults, they need to take responsibility for their actions, and I won't let them escape. So, you're not even going to apologize for what you've done? Do you understand the position you've put yourself in? Wait a minute, it's not what you think. Let me explain. There's a good reason for this. A good reason? I wish they'd stop taking me for a fool. There's no justifiable reason for cheating. They just couldn't control their desires. I baited them to make excuses, but I never expected them to start with denial instead of apologizing. Maybe I was foolish to have even a bit of hope. I thought they would at least apologize first. How naive to think that people who cheat would have any semblance of decent feelings. A good reason for cheating. I'd love to hear this. Even a child knows that betraying someone is wrong. It was just a moment of weakness. Just once we hadn't been intimate in a while, and I was feeling pent up. I just thought it'd be a way to relieve some stress. Yeah, that's right. It was just a little slip-up.
A slip-up? Really? Thinking about it now, maybe my best friend was encouraging me to divorce so she could be with my husband. It's not like my husband is rich, and my friend's husband is quite wealthy. So, it couldn't have been for money. More likely, they developed feelings they shouldn't have. Well, as adults and married people, acting without thinking about the consequences is unimaginable.
Can you swear it was only once? Of course. It was just a bit of fun. Nothing more. Can you forgive us, just this once?
So they think by saying all this, I'm going to forgive and trust them? And I can tell that my best friend's husband, silently listening to our conversation, is also furious. Do they really think we'll forgive them if they just make excuses? And if they want forgiveness, shouldn't an apology be the first step? They haven't apologized for their actions, nor have they considered my feelings. All they're thinking about is how to get us to let them off the hook. I was truly disgusted to have such people as a best friend and husband.
Shouldn't an apology come first? Expecting forgiveness without even apologizing. I can't believe such audacity. I'm really sorry. Please forgive us.
They can't even apologize without being prompted. A clear sign they're not really remorseful. Even now, with things having come to this point, they can't apologize unless told to. I had no intention of forgiving them, but something they said earlier caught my attention. Was this really the first time? It's hard to believe I just happened to catch them cheating like this. It's more natural to think they've been doing this for a while. And the way my husband escorted her, it didn't seem like their first time. They entered the house and started right away without any hesitation. Evidence of their familiarity. They think if they insist it's the first time, I'll believe them, but I'm not fooled anymore. Everything they say is a lie.
Really, the first time? I watched the whole thing, and it didn't look like a first-time encounter. And even if it was, it seemed premeditated.
That already raises suspicion.
What? It really was the first time. It's just a coincidence that you were here today. That's why I can't trust someone who betrays me so easily. Show me your phone. My phone?
Just give it to me. I demanded and took his phone. If it truly was their first time, there should be evidence on his phone. If they had been cheating, there'd be messages or photos. If not, there'd be nothing. I expected to find something, so I opened the phone and checked it with my best friend's husband. And there it was. It turned out they had been cheating for over 6 months. The first time, huh? All lies. What a joke. How much more do you plan to mock us? To think you've been deceiving me for 6 months. Betraying someone and then feeling good about yourself? And my so-called best friend? Knowing I was having issues with my husband, yet she goes and has an affair with him. This is no friend at all.
You've been involved for 6 months and now you're playing dumb? Are you mocking me? No, it's not like that. I didn't want to hurt you. I know what I've done is wrong. I've been thinking about improving our relationship too. Stop it already. Betraying me, lying to me. You can't even apologize sincerely. I'm so disappointed in you.
I yelled at my husband and slammed his phone on the floor. Maybe I should have kept it for evidence, but I didn't care at that moment. I just couldn't hold back my feelings anymore. Then, as if to stop me, my best friend's husband stepped forward and tapped my shoulder.
Do you two have any idea what you've done? I'm really sorry. I didn't mean any harm. You were always busy with work, and I just wanted a little excitement. But I truly love only you. Please forgive me. I'm divorcing you. That's all I have to say. What? I'm deeply sorry. I swear we'll never meet again. Please, just this once, forgive us. I beg you.
After all the lies, how can I possibly trust either of you? And yet, who do they think they are? Do they really think such a shallow apology will be accepted? This is beyond ridiculous. I will never accept their apologies, and I will never forgive them.
I'm divorcing you too, and I'll be informing your company. Wait! The company has nothing to do with this. What makes you think you have the right to say that? After betraying someone like this, I'll ruin your life. No!
Enough with the jokes. Do they think they're in any position to argue? My anger is at its limit.
Don't mock people. You too will suffer for the rest of your lives, and I have no sympathy for you. This is the consequence of your actions, and how adults take responsibility. And now I realize, you married me just for my money, didn't you? No, that's not true. I truly love you. I run a business, so I couldn't always give you attention. I always indulge your whims, remember? How much money have I spent on you? And yet, you go satisfy your desires with my best friend's husband, utterly despicable.
My best friend's husband had reached his breaking point. I learned at their wedding that he ran a business. Though not a huge company, it was quite profitable, and my best friend enjoyed a good life thanks to that. But she only saw her husband as an ATM and chose my husband to satisfy her lust, truly rotten to the core. And my husband, knowing all this, was no better.
Our firm has a contract with a prominent law firm, so we'll be getting a lawyer who's strong in divorce cases.
Don't think you can escape.
Fine. I'll do whatever it takes if we're divorcing.
Angry now, are you?
Don't make him angrier. It'll only make things worse. Just hold back. It doesn't matter how angry you make me, the amount you'll owe for the division of assets won't change. I might as well take everything and divorce you. You're getting a divorce too, so let's just remarry each other. That'll work out best for everyone, right?
What? I was dumbfounded, but she finally showed her true colors. This was the real face of my best friend. Thinking only of herself, consumed by greed, a perfect match for such words.
You're mistaken if you think there's much money for you. Don't mock me. The assets built after marriage are to be split equally between us.
Yeah. I hardly take any salary from the company. Most of it goes to monthly card payments, living expenses, and the mortgage. We can sell the house, but given its location, I doubt it'll even cover the mortgage. Ready to share the debt? Hearing this, my friend's husband, who was furious moments ago, collapsed to his knees. Cheaters never prosper in the end. I don't think my best friend, who's been jobless, can afford to survive, so she'll probably end up in debt. Her parents are quite strict, so I doubt they'll offer her any help. As for my husband, I'm going to report him to his company, and he'll probably lose his job. A decent life seems unlikely for him now. This whole mess will probably end our relationship with my best friend, and I can't imagine anyone helping out someone who cheated. We had many mutual acquaintances with my husband, but none of them are so morally corrupt.
This place is in your name, so I'll pack my things and leave today. Just sign the divorce papers in the meantime. I'll get my lawyer to contact you further. Don't rush into things like this. I have my side of the story. Your side of the story? Why would I listen to such nonsense? Just sign the divorce papers quietly, and if you have any complaints, feel free to consult a lawyer and argue your case.
With that said, I went back to my room and immediately started packing. I explained everything to my parents when I went back home. It was tough keeping it together in front of my husband and best friend, but the shock of being betrayed by the two people I trusted most was overwhelming, and I broke down crying in front of my parents. They kindly took me in, and I managed to get a week off from work. I used that time for mental rest and consulting with a lawyer about the divorce. It took some time to negotiate, but eventually, I was able to cut ties with my ex-husband.
Hello. Thank you for covering the lawyer's fees. And I'm sorry for all the trouble my ex-husband caused. Don't apologize. My ex-wife was part of the problem too. Fortunately, the lawyer our company works with took the case at a reduced rate. Thank you.
Later, I heard from my best friend's ex-husband that she had incurred a significant amount of debt. As expected, she's now struggling to pay it off. Since she hadn't worked since marrying him, she's now working part-time at a supermarket. Living in an old apartment, the amount she can spare for debt repayment after covering living expenses is meager. It'll take her years to pay it off, but it's a fitting end for her. Betrayal carries a heavy price. After that, I contacted my ex-husband's company, and he was cornered into becoming a marginal employee. He wasn't competent at work to begin with, and his departure didn't really harm the company. Unable to endure the work environment, he soon quit. But now, I wonder how he'll manage his life from here on out. As for those who betray others, they deserve to suffer. Meanwhile, I used the damages I received to find a new place to live and have managed to return to my regular life. My work environment hasn't changed. I'm still an office worker with a modest salary, but I've come to appreciate the kindness of those around me anew. Sure, getting married again might be difficult, and I might remain single for life. But what's important isn't marriage. It's about having people who genuinely care and are willing to help when needed. Just having such people around makes me feel fortunate. I plan to keep cherishing these invaluable everyday moments and live life facing forward. How long are you going to sleep? Don't skimp on housework just because you have a cold. You're nothing but a slave. Startled by my husband's angry voice at close range, I sprang up from the sofa. Today, I had a fever of 104 degrees in the morning and decided to take the day off from work. Even seeing me in poor health, my husband showed no concern and said, "If you're taking a day off, make sure you do the housework," before he left for work. If the housework wasn't done before my husband returned, he would become furious and scold me. Just the thought of it was terrifying. However, my body wouldn't cooperate, and it seemed I had been sleeping as if I had passed out until now. It was already dark outside, and when I woke up, my husband was standing in front of me with a fierce look, having returned from work. "Don't tell me you spent the whole day sleeping? What do you have to say?" Confronted by my husband, I felt the blood drain from my face. I wanted to run away in fear, but my body was too heavy to move. My husband always forced housework on me, treating me like a slave every day. He was kind when we were dating, but his attitude changed drastically as soon as we got married. Still, I wanted to believe in him, but the constant verbal abuse was wearing me down. "I'm sorry. I'll start preparing dinner right now." Holding back tears, I answered and stood up from the sofa, staggering. My husband didn't offer a hand. Instead, he shouted at me from behind as I headed to the kitchen. "You really are useless." Right after that, I felt an impact on my back and stumbled forward. Incredibly, my husband had kicked me hard from behind. "Hurry up and make dinner and clean the bathroom. By the way, there was no beer in the fridge. Go buy some right now." Looking down at me as I fell, he urged me on in a cold voice, and I couldn't take it anymore. It felt like I was being told I was only worth as much as a slave, and despair welled up inside me. Tears streamed down my face, not understanding why I had to be treated this way. "Begging you, please stop," I appealed, but my husband just sneered. Just as he was about to kick me again, a familiar voice that wasn't his was heard at the entrance of the living room. "My name is Mia. I currently live alone, away from my family home, and work as an office assistant in a company. I lost my mother at a young age and lived with my father until I got a job. My father, gentle and earnest, poured a lot of love into me, his only daughter, making up for the absence of my mother. I'm truly grateful to my father, who went through a lot of trouble but worked hard to raise me and send me to college. Leaving home to live on my own and parting from my father was unbearably sad. Mia, remember your dad is always on your side. If you ever have trouble, you can always rely on me." He sent me off with a kind smile, and we keep in touch regularly, updating each other on our lives. When I go home for holidays or the end of the year, my father always welcomes me warmly, which is comforting. As an executive in his workplace, my father also gave me advice on work, which was very helpful in my early career. I've just entered my second year at my current job. I was finally getting used to working life and finding fulfillment in the increasing responsibilities. One day, as I was about to have lunch in the break room, a senior colleague approached me. "Good job, Mia." The man who greeted me with a refreshing smile was John, who would later become my husband. John, 3 years my senior, works in sales. In fact, John is the son of the company president. However, he never flaunts it and always greets me casually in the break room. Being close in age made it easy to talk to him, and I had a good impression of him from before. "You seem to be working hard lately. Our sales successes are thanks to the support from office staff like you, Mia." "Thanks always," he said, making me naturally smile. "Thank you too." As I responded, John continued, "You know, I've been wanting to talk to you about things other than work. How about we have dinner together sometime?" Apparently, he was attracted to my earnest attitude towards work and wanted to deepen our interaction. I was surprised as I had never been approached so actively by a man before. "Really? Are you sure about me?" "Of course. If you'd like, let's exchange contact information. I'll send you a message tonight," John said with a smile to a bewildered me, pulling out his smartphone to continue the conversation. Sometimes, John's somewhat assertive side shows through. He's always clear about what he wants and never shies away from anything. On the other hand, I've always been timid and often find myself unable to voice my own opinions just from the look on someone else's face. That's why John's assertiveness and decisiveness seemed so attractive to me. From the day we exchanged contact information, we began interacting privately and went out to eat together many times. As we spent more time alone together and our relationship deepened, John confessed his feelings to me. "Will you go out with me?" he asked seriously, and I was overjoyed. By that time, I had also developed feelings for John, so nodding was the only thing I could think of. Thus, we started dating as a couple, and everything seemed to be going well. However, when it became known at the company that I was dating John, warnings started coming from other seniors and colleagues. "Mia, you're relatively new here and might not know this, but John has some personality issues. There are even people who have quit because of him," a senior who had always been kind to me advised me. A colleague I was close with also said, "He yelled at a junior in the break room just the other day, right in front of everyone. I'm not trying to be mean, but you really should think twice about dating him." Despite these warnings, I couldn't imagine John, who I knew, doing such things. Sure, he could be assertive, but I couldn't picture him cornering someone or yelling. I knew my seniors and colleagues were trying to look out for me, but it hurt to hear John being treated like a bad guy. He was always sincere with me, leading me whenever I lacked confidence or decisiveness. I loved him for that, so I decided to take rumors with a grain of salt. Even after hearing these things, our relationship continued, and one day, a year into our dating, John asked, "Hey Mia, shouldn't we think about getting married soon?" We were spending a weekend at his place when he popped the question. I was 25 and John was 28 at the time. Honestly, I felt it was a bit early. But John, eager to marry and always quick to act, pressed on. "I really love you, Mia. I want to make it official as soon as possible. You want to marry me too, right?" "Yes, of course." "Then there's no need to wait. We both have stable incomes, and I won't object if you want to keep working after we marry." Unable to come up with a reply, I eventually gave in to his determination and nodded. "Yes. Thank you, Mia. I'll always cherish you." Seeing his joy, I couldn't bring myself to express my anxiety about marriage. But I too wanted to marry John someday and decided to look forward to it positively. Our year together had been so enjoyable, surely our married life would be too. Soon after, we went to inform my dad at my family home. He was surprised, but then smiled gently. "Mia's not a kid anymore. I won't oppose what you've decided." Then he looked straight at John and bowed deeply. "Please take good care of Mia. She lost her mother early and doesn't have siblings, so she's had her fair share of loneliness.
I'm entrusting you to be there for her. Dad always put me first." His words were filled with love, and I teared up, even though we weren't married yet. "Yes, count on me," John replied confidently. "Mia, I'm always here for you in this house. If things get tough, you can always come back," Dad said as we were leaving. His warm words brought tears to my eyes again. I was so happy that Dad blessed our marriage. A few days later, we visited John's family. John's father, the president of our company, is strict at work but laid back in private. His mother welcomed me warmly, happy about our marriage. "Please take care of our son. If he ever causes trouble, feel free to reach out," his father said formally. I was surprised, having only seen him in president mode before. "Don't be so formal, Dad. You're surprising Mia," John said, but his father, serious in nature, never treated me lightly and always showed respect. John had told me his father was strict and intimidating, but to me, he seemed thoughtful and kind. Feeling reassured that I could build a good relationship with my in-laws, John and I got married and moved into a spacious apartment to start our life together. I decided to continue working while managing the household chores. However, looking back, I realize I underestimated what marriage entailed. I had hardly ever argued with John and believed we would continue to live harmoniously as a married couple. I was painfully mistaken, and it became clear just a week after our wedding. As we settled into our life together, I started noticing John's flaws that hadn't bothered me during our dating period. First, John never helped with household chores. Despite both of us working full-time, my suggestion to share the responsibilities was dismissed. Even though John had lived alone before our marriage and was capable of doing housework, he completely stopped once we got married. "Housework is the wife's job, isn't it? Unlike you, who sits at a desk all day, I have field work. I come home tired every day, there's no way I can help with chores." He would excuse himself, leaving everything to me. Indeed, John was busy with client meetings and negotiations every day, often working overtime. It felt wrong to ask him to help. But the problem didn't end there. "Hey, where's dinner? The bathroom isn't clean either. I'm tired, so hurry up. Oh, and there's no beer. Go buy some later," John would command from the sofa upon returning from work. His continuous demands nearly drove me to my breaking point. "Wait a minute, I just got back too. I'll start cooking now, can you pick up the beer?" "What? Why should I go out again? Stop complaining and go buy it yourself," he would yell back, winning the argument with his intimidating tone. After marriage, John's treatment towards me changed drastically, becoming arrogant and dismissive. His attitude wasn't limited to our home. One day at the office, during lunch in the break room, I heard his irritated voice. "How many times do I have to tell you? Why can't you get it right?" I turned to see John scolding a subordinate, a colleague, who had previously told me about John's behavior. Sighed, "There he goes again." I whispered, "John used to do that before." She nodded, "Yeah, he even made someone apologize. He does it regardless of the place." I couldn't believe it and looked back at John, who was still angrily berating his subordinate. "This company will be mine in the future. If I become president, useless people like you will be the first to go." I couldn't stand listening anymore and approached him. As his wife, I couldn't just watch. "What are you doing? Stop it," I said. John glared at me annoyingly and then realized everyone in the break room was watching. He clicked his tongue and left without a word. That night, John came home and immediately yelled at me. "What was that at lunch? A mere employee shouldn't talk back to the future president like me." His abusive language shocked me into silence. "But your behavior was too much," I finally said, angering him further. He slammed his bag on the floor. "Shut up. You're useless at work and at home. Don't tell me what to do." I flinched, unable to respond firmly due to my timid nature. His words hurt deeply. He used to appreciate my hard work.
I had been doing my best at both my job and housework. Even after a tiring day at work, I always managed to finish all the chores. But John never acknowledged that, leaving me heartbroken. I began to see John verbally abusing employees more often. However, he cleverly hid his true nature in front of his father and superiors, targeting only those weaker or lower in rank. Boasting about inheriting the company, he continued his unjustified tirades. The bad rumors I had heard were true. Moreover, John's tyrannical behavior worsened towards me. "What, dinner's not ready? Isn't the bathroom cleaned yet? You know when I come home. Normally, everything should be perfectly prepared," he would criticize coldly. It was impossible to have everything ready by the time he got home unless he worked late. Yet, he would sigh deeply and say, "What's the point of being married if my wife is this useless? You're no help at work either." "I'm sorry. I'll get it ready now," I would reply weakly, feeling his cold gaze. Being constantly berated as useless at work and home, treated like a slave, my spirit began to break. Living with John had become so unbearable that I thought about contacting my father or father-in-law for help. However, they had both been so supportive of our marriage, and I didn't want to burden them with my problems. Above all, I was most afraid of John finding out if I confided in anyone. I was sure that would lead to even worse treatment than I was already experiencing. But one day, an incident occurred that made me wish I had sought help sooner. I woke up one morning feeling utterly exhausted and with a fever of 104 degrees. It seemed like the stress and strain of my daily life had finally taken a toll on my health. It was so difficult to even get out of bed that I had no choice but to call off work for the day. That's when I heard John's angry voice outside the bedroom. Despite feeling weak, I got up to prepare his breakfast in the living room. John was waiting there, visibly irritated. I explained that I was feeling ill. "I took my temperature and it's 104 degrees, so I've decided to take the day off work. I'm sorry, but I can only make a simple breakfast." I apologized. John just glared at me disdainfully and said coldly, "It's just a cold. Take better care of yourself." He showed no concern for my well-being. After reluctantly eating the breakfast I managed to prepare, John coldly said, "Don't just sleep all day because you're off work." "I won't stand for any slacking off in the housework," and left for work. Before we were married, John would have come to take care of me if I was bedridden with a cold. It was hard to believe how much he had changed since we started our married life. He had always been selfish, never really considering others. I couldn't understand why I had agreed to marry him, and tears started to flow. After a small breakfast and taking some fever reducer, I thought about doing what housework I could, but my head was foggy and my body wouldn't cooperate. Being alone while feeling ill only made my thoughts spiral negatively. I considered calling my father for help, but it was likely he had just started his workday. Not wanting to be a bother, I collapsed on the sofa instead. I decided to rest a bit before trying to do any housework, but I quickly lost consciousness. I'm not sure how much time had passed when I was suddenly startled awake by John's voice close by. "Hey Mia. How long are you gonna sleep? Dinner isn't ready and nothing's been done." I sat up quickly from the sofa. "What? John, you're back? What time is it?" I looked around, the lights were on and it was dark outside. Realizing I had slept since the afternoon, my heart sank. "What's with this room? You haven't cleaned or done the laundry. Don't tell me you've just been sleeping all day and neglecting the housework. What's going on?" John's angry voice pounded in my already aching head. The fever reducer hadn't worked, or its effects had worn off. I was still hot and disoriented. John, furious, left me with no option but to apologize. "I'm sorry, I'm just not feeling well. I'll start preparing dinner now," I said weakly, struggling to stand up from the sofa. John didn't offer to help. Instead, he glared at me with a stern face. "Don't use your illness as an excuse to slack off. Since you took the day off work, you should have at least finished all the housework. You're really useless.
His harsh words finally brought me to my breaking point. Tears filled my eyes as I protested shakily. "I'm not your servant. Can't you let me rest when I'm feeling unwell? Aren't we supposed to help each other out as a married couple?" "What? Who do you think you're talking to? Just hurry up and make dinner and get the bathroom ready. I'm tired." John ignored my plea, only thinking of himself. I was so frustrated, but standing there made my head spin, and I lacked the energy to argue any further. As I turned my back on John to head to the kitchen, he snarled. "Really, skipping housework just because of a cold? You're nothing but a slave." Right after that, I felt a sharp impact on my back as John kicked me. I let out a small cry and fell, hitting my head on the corner of the sofa. Clutching my throbbing head, I crouched down, only to be looked down upon by an irritated John. "By the way, there's no beer in the fridge. Go buy some now, hurry up and stand up," John said in a cold voice, pushing me to my breaking point. Tears streamed down my face as I looked up at him, pleading, "Please, just stop." But John just sneered at me. "You think crying will solve everything? That's what annoys me. What do you think I married you for? Even if you're incompetent, at least be of some use to me." Hearing John's words, I felt like my world was darkening. Was his rush to marry me just so he could treat me like a slave? It felt like he was saying I was only worth that much, and despair overwhelmed me. "Weren't you kind to me in the past? Was that all a lie?" I asked, recalling the kind version of John the first knew before our marriage. But he just grinned mockingly at my question. "Yeah. It was a hassle, but I did it to make a good impression on you. I thought you, being timid, would be easy to manipulate." His words shattered the last bit of hope I had in him. "How can you be so cruel?" I cried, tears wetting my face. John looked at me with disgust. "Stand up already," he urged, raising his foot to kick me again. Unable to get up, I covered my head with my hands and closed my eyes. But then, a voice that wasn't John's came from the entrance of the living room. "Is there anything else you'd like to say?" A calm yet angry voice that I recognized. As I looked up, John also turned around. There stood my father and father-in-law, standing tall. The voice was unmistakably my father-in-law's. "Dad! And you too, Mia's father? Why are you here?" John panicked, but my father rushed to my side to support me. "Mia, are you okay? I heard from Tim that you were sick and took the day off." Tim is my father-in-law's name. "Dad." Overwhelmed, I cried as my father spoke gently to me. While comforting me, he glared at John with a furious expression. "We came to check on you because we were worried. What have you done to our daughter?" John backed away, intimidated by my father's presence, but my father-in-law was right behind him. "I could tell you didn't care about Mia from your behavior at the office. Have you always spoken to her so harshly? Shame on you." Apparently, my father-in-law had become suspicious of John's indifferent response about my condition and called my father to check on me at home. I was touched by his concern and cried even more. "Wait, Dad, it's a misunderstanding. Mia just slept all day without doing any housework, so I scolded her a bit." John tried to defend himself, but my father-in-law's cold gaze said it all. "Why would you expect your sick wife to do all the housework? Couldn't you have done something yourself?" "Well, Mia's always done it all. It's her job in our house." John's selfish reasoning only enraged my father more. "Don't be ridiculous. We saw you yelling at and kicking Mia, making her fall. Don't you feel any shame for treating your sick wife so terribly?" My father scolded John, who turned pale and looked desperately at my father-in-law for help. "But there was no forgiveness. We'll continue this at home. Come back to your parents' house today," my father-in-law declared. John, with no escape, trembled in fear. "No way!" And John collapsed, foaming at his mouth. Afterwards, my father-in-law deeply apologized to me, and my father took me to the hospital. According to the doctor, the sudden fever was likely caused by overwork and stress.
As a result, I received a medical certificate and decided to take some time off work to recuperate. My father insisted that I couldn't go back to my own home under these circumstances, so I ended up resting at my parents' house. Then, the next day, John started bombarding me with messages. Despite being subdued by my father-in-law the day before, it was clear he hadn't learned his lesson. Dozens of messages from John arrived, all filled with vulgar and childish insults.
You made me get scolded all night by my father. It's all your fault. You've embarrassed me.
His messages turned my anger into disbelief. I find myself feeling disgusted for getting involved with such a hopeless person. Fed up with being caught in such a hopeless situation, I decided to divorce him. I conveyed my intention to divorce through a message, and once I recovered, we agreed to discuss it. I was scared to return to the house where John was, but knowing that my father and father-in-law would be there eased my anxiety slightly. As soon as the discussion started, I handed John the divorce papers. But John, sitting across the table, stubbornly said, "I will never agree to a divorce." My father-in-law scolded him, "Stop being childish." My father, sitting next to me, slammed the table and glared fiercely at John.
Think about how you've treated our daughter. What do you mean you haven't apologized even once? Shouldn't you apologize to her first before complaining?
Both my father and father-in-law, faces red with anger, berated John. Overwhelmed by their intensity, John turned pale and couldn't muster a response. After a while, he reluctantly bowed his head to me.
"I'm sorry. But I still don't want a divorce." "Well then, take a look at this,"
I said, fed up with his refusal to divorce. I took out a piece of paper from my bag and laid it on the table next to the divorce papers, causing John to open his eyes wide in surprise. It was the medical certificate I had received from the hospital.
"Read what's written here. My fever was due to the mental stress and overwork caused by you. If you don't agree to the divorce, I'll take this to court." "Court? Wait, please don't."
John started to panic, but I was prepared to go to court if he refused to consent to the divorce. Besides the certificate, my father-in-law had cleverly recorded a video as evidence when John kicked me, putting John at a significant disadvantage if this went to trial. John looked to my father-in-law for support, but there was no way he would defend him. With a stern expression and a silent urging gaze, my father-in-law waited. "All right." John finally conceded and signed the divorce papers with a heavy heart. Thus, our divorce was finalized, and I received a substantial alimony payment. I returned to my parents' home and began living with my father again. After our divorce, John's behavior at the company became widely known, and his previous tyrannical actions led to him being viewed disdainfully by his colleagues. His pride wouldn't allow him to resign, so he continued to go to work, though under uncomfortable circumstances. Despite causing such a commotion, he still believed the company would one day be his. However, my father-in-law, furious about the recent events, decided to appoint a competent employee from within the company as his successor. Once this was declared, the employee's attitudes towards John changed dramatically. No longer taken seriously by anyone, John eventually couldn't handle the situation and showed up at my family home. I was just beginning to regain a sense of normalcy when John burst in, blaming me for everything.
"It's all your fault. You've ruined my life,"
he yelled at the entrance, glaring at me with resentment. I was finally fed up.
"Don't be ridiculous. It's you who's ruined your life. If you make any more trouble, I'll call the police."
John was taken aback by my response, but soon began shouting again in a rage.
"Don't mess with me, everyone's making a fool out of me."
When he tried to grab me, I flinched, remembering the previous assault.
"Stop it. Let go of Mia."
But my father quickly intervened, pulling John away from me.
"You've learned nothing. Stay away from my daughter forever."
While my father scolded John, I managed to call the police with trembling hands. The police soon arrived and restrained John. "Damn it," he shouted, glaring at us until the end. That was the last I saw of John. Afterward, he was fired from the company. My father-in-law even came to apologize to us personally. "I'm truly sorry for everything," he said. We assured him it wasn't his fault. "It's not your fault." John's father lamented his own parenting, feeling deeply ashamed. Seeing him so distressed was hard for me, and I knew I could never forgive John. A restraining order was issued against him. After taking some time off, I decided to leave the company. "Mia, it's not your fault. I know you've been working hard for the company every day. Won't you stay with the company?" My father-in-law tried to convince me to stay, but my mind was made up. "Thank you. But staying on might create an awkward situation with you. I'm sorry for any trouble I've caused. I truly appreciate everything you've done for me until now." I expressed my gratitude to my father-in-law, declined his offer, and resigned from the company. Later, my father offered me a job at his company, but I declined. Nodding in agreement is easy, but I can't rely solely on my father. I needed to overcome my timid nature and stand on my own. I want to reevaluate my timid nature. From now on, I'm going to try and stand on my own. My father supported my decision, though he seemed a little sad. "Is that so? If that's what you've decided, Amia, I'll support you. It's your life, so live it the way you want." Saying this, my father readily agreed, and I could see a hint of tears in his eyes. We decided to sell the house and move to prevent any further intrusion by John. My father then relocated abroad, something he had been interested in for some time. Eventually, I heard about John's fate from my father-in-law. After the police released him, John's parents sent him to a distant relative's farm as a form of rehabilitation. He's been nothing but trouble since he came back. "We're going to straighten him out from scratch," my father-in-law said with determination. As for me, I found a new job and moved to a new place. It will take time to get used to this new life, and I need to sort out my feelings, so for a while, I plan to focus solely on my work. I'm not thinking about a new boyfriend or remarriage right now. Maybe someday a wonderful meeting will happen, but I'll take it slow and at my own pace. My father and I still catch up through international calls. He seems happy living abroad. And I'm looking forward to seeing him when he visits here at the end of the year. From now on, I plan to cherish my life and live it fully. "Get out, I'm moving in with my fiancé," Nora declared triumphantly out of the blue, leaving me momentarily speechless with my mouth agape. "What?" I wondered how to respond, while Tom stood beside me, equally stunned. "We'll take care of the loan, it's $1,200 a month," Ken added, his voice tinged with laughter, which thankfully kick-started my rational thinking. I said, "Then I'll leave," thinking the loan is $12,000. I replied, struggling to suppress my laughter, without voicing my inner thoughts. Watching Nora and Ken laughing and saying "serves you right," I calmly analyzed the two in my mind. Poor things, they're done for. I thought as the two high-fived, while only Tom grew pale. Foreseeing the future but unable to change it, I gently patted Tom's back, consoling him. What else could be done? One must take responsibility for their words. My name is Yvonne, and I'm 59 years old. Working as a freelance consultant. I also earn income as an affiliate marketer, making no less than $20,000 a month. Of course, reaching this point wasn't easy, it took many trials and errors. My journey to freelancing and affiliate marketing began with my father's care. Since my parents' divorce when I was 7, my dad raised me alone. Wanting to repay him, I sought a job I could do from home to be near him, as he couldn't even go to the bathroom by himself. I chose freelancing for its flexible hours. While I was out, a helper would come over, and I'd take my dad to the hospital, pushing his wheelchair. I cherished our casual conversations and the scenery we shared on those trips. My dad passed away 8 years ago, but I continued my consulting and affiliate marketing work. I met my 60-year-old husband, Tom, through my consulting. Tom, who runs a small company, was originally my client. Tom, who worked harder than anyone else for the sake of his company and employees, found that despite his efforts, the business was deteriorating. Competent employees left, and despite his hard work, performance didn't improve. Lost and fearing for his employees' futures, he sought my help. While there were various minor reasons, one major cause was Tom's excessive kindness. Not all employees were inspired to work harder by seeing Tom, who worked more than anyone else. Some employees thought they could take it easy, and there were even those who mocked the hard-working president. Employees introduced by acquaintances or business partners, despite frequently slacking off or being absent without notice, were not dismissed. Instead, there were repeated attempts at discussion under the belief that talking it over would lead to improvement. Over time, this situation created a vicious cycle where the hard-working employees developed resentment, leading to the departure of competent personnel. Tom would also wait endlessly for payments from struggling partners, ironically leading to salary issues for his employees. While it might be appreciated by business partners, it's counterproductive if it leads to a situation where the company cannot pay its employees' salaries. The employees also have families to support. It seemed inevitable that employees, feeling uncertain about the company's future, would start leaving the job. I had to make Tom understand that his employees had families too, and their futures depended on his decisions. He needed to make the right choices as a business owner. From then on, Tom became stricter with employees who slacked off or missed work without notice, and set clear deadlines for delinquent clients, insisting on payment without further delay. This was all to protect his precious employees and their families. If it meant safeguarding them, Tom wouldn't hesitate to spend money on a lawyer. Tom might have seemed a bit unreliable as a president, but I admired his humanity. We started going out for meals, where I learned his wife had passed away over a decade ago due to illness. And naturally, our conversations turned to how my father raised me alone. These outings gradually became our healing time. After dating for about 2 years, Tom proposed to me 6 years ago. I met his daughter, Nora, after the proposal. She was 21 and in college at the time. She was enjoying her carefree student life. "Are you after Dad's money or what?" That was Nora's response when Tom introduced me. "Excuse me?" I replied, perplexed by her suspicious look and obvious distaste. Maybe Nora felt like I was taking her father away. Or perhaps there had been women around Tom before who seemed to be after his money. "What nonsense!" Tom started to scold her, but Nora turned away, refusing to listen. I let out a small sigh and explained I wasn't after his money. "If you don't believe me, ask your dad to write a will. Everything goes to the daughter." "Oh, that's a good idea. Let's do that." I never expected her to call me Mom. Or to replace her late mother. But this was a problem beyond that. Reluctantly, Nora consented to our marriage. I later found out Tom was incredibly indulgent with Nora. He'd give her money whenever she asked. And buy her whatever she wants. "Aren't you spoiling her a bit too much?" I'd say, and Tom would scratch his head, saying, "Sorry. I guess." After her mom passed, I felt she was lonely. And when the company was in trouble, she had to endure financial hardships too. I understood his feelings, but this was creating a daughter reliant on her father. With my own experience in mind, I wondered if I should intervene. But then I thought, Nora's habit of quitting jobs quickly probably stemmed from knowing she could always rely on her dad. Anyway, think about what's really best for your daughter. At this rate, she'll just keep quitting jobs after college. Tom pondered my words. Perhaps realizing this couldn't continue. So he made a proposal to Nora. He'd only give her an allowance until she graduated college, then no more gifts except for birthdays and Christmas. The money she earned from working could be all hers. Huh. Nora initially looked dissatisfied, but after talking with friends, she realized it was a fair deal. Some people, once they start working, might even live on their own. There are probably people who contribute financially to their households as well. Living at home, Nora could spend all the money she earned any way she liked. Got it. So, it's business as usual until I graduate from college, right? She perked up and took full advantage of Tom's generosity for the next year and a half. Now, Nora is 27. As promised, she's been using her salary for herself, not contributing to the household. She doesn't quit jobs like she did in college, probably because she knows she'd lose her spending money. However, her selfish nature hasn't changed, and she never warmed up to me. She's convinced I married Tom for financial ease. This was 3 years ago when Nora was 24. When Tom told her about my new house, she frowned skeptically. What, some cheap place in the sticks? Commutable? She laughed dismissively. Or is it even fit for living? I never told Nora about my monthly income of over $20,000. Luckily, she's indifferent to me and, although she knows I work from home, never asked about my earnings. It's hardly the sticks, I replied. It might even make commuting easier. I've always dreamed of a spacious new house. When I showed her the 7-bedroom house plan and exterior photo, close to the station, even Nora exclaimed, "Wow, that's amazing." Dad really splurged, huh?
No, I didn't buy it.
But he must have chipped in, right? She looked at me with disbelief, as if such a nice, large house was beyond my means. I could only sigh at her constant attitude. I think it was right after we moved in. Returning from a consulting job, I stopped by a cafe I happened to see. While reading a paperback and sipping coffee, I heard a commotion. I looked up, recognizing the familiar voice, and saw Nora at a nearby table. She was unaware of me behind her. On a date, perhaps? A young man about her age sat opposite her. "You're working and can't even take me out to dinner? What kind of boyfriend are you?" She berated him loudly, expecting him to pay for dinner as a gift. The other customers glanced over, wondering what was happening. The young man, unlike Nora, seemed calm. After he said something, Nora splashed water on him and stormed out of the cafe. "Hey!" I quickly got up and offered the young man a handkerchief. He looked back, surprised, as I apologized. "I'm so sorry for Nora's rude behavior." When I introduced myself as Nora's mother, the young man exclaimed, "Oh," and then scratched his wet head, saying, "Sorry you had to see that embarrassing moment." He is John, a year older than Nora at 25. He met her at a mixer. He was caring for his parents.
That's quite young to be taking on such responsibility. Yeah, I was a late child for my parents. It must be tough caring for both parents,
I said, then quickly apologized for my possibly intrusive comment. "I'm sorry.
I took care of my father too, so I understand some of the difficulties."
John assured me it was okay, admitting that he sometimes felt overwhelmed, wishing he could hang out more like his friends.
I actually do find it tough sometimes. I often wish I could hang out and have fun like the others around me.
The mixer that John attended was apparently organized by his friends as a way to cheer him up and provide a distraction. He'd gone to the mixer for a break, never intending to date anyone, but Nora pursued him relentlessly.
"Nora is fun to be with, but I don't have much money."
He cares for his parents and accompanies them to the hospital during the day, and works night shifts 4 days a week. Money was tight, he said.
"I see.
Today, I couldn't pay the water bill and asked the company if they could wait until payday. Nora overheard and dumped me, saying she can't be with a poor man." I felt tears well up as John laughed it off. "I'm truly sorry for her rudeness. She just didn't understand the hardships of caring for parents." I was feeling a mix of regret and anger. Remembering my own experience with my father's care, I offered to help John by introducing him to a job he could do from home. 3 years later, Nora brought home a young man she wanted to marry. Personally, I thought John, with his kind nature, would have been a better match, but Nora's fiancé, Ken, wasn't bad looking either. Introduced through a dating app. Ken, who works in the administrative department of a company, was asked by Tom if he enjoys his job. However, Ken's response was primarily complaints about his boss, colleagues, and the company itself. Ken just got unlucky with his company. Nora chimed in, and Ken laughed, yeah, right?
If things get tough, you can always work at Dad's company. That'd be great, thanks.
They said, already taking it for granted. Tom and I could only exchange wry smiles. We were sensing that Ken would likely be dissatisfied anywhere he worked. It's likely that some form of dissatisfaction or complaint would emerge.
So, that's why.
Nora suddenly clapped her hands and grinned at me.
I'm moving in with my fiancé, so you need to move out.
Her triumphant declaration left me speechless for a moment.
What?
I wondered how to respond, while Tom stood beside me, equally stunned.
We'll take care of the loan, it's $1,200 a month.
Ken's laughter made my thoughts clear again.
Oh, right, that time.
I remember, a few months ago. Nora saw the loan statement I'd left on the table while organizing my drawers.
Is that what the loan on this house is?
I felt a bit of discomfort hearing this. It seemed odd. Little did I know she'd misread the amount. I said, then I'll leave, thinking the loan is $120,000. I replied, holding back laughter. And began using my phone.
But just so you know, even if we change the ownership, I doubt you can restructure the loan. If Nora and Ken can't pay, the house will have to be sold, and the remainder paid in full. Is that okay?
Sure, no problem. Nora replied, almost mockingly. I nodded.
And if the house sells for less than the remaining loan, the difference will be charged to Nora, the new owner. Is that all right?
Yep.
Totally fine. Then, there's no issue from my side.
I made Nora write a pledge. Take that. Watching her and Ken laugh, I calmly analyzed them.
Poor things, they're done for.
A little thought would reveal that a spacious house close to the station couldn't possibly be bought for a $1,200 monthly loan. If I were Ken, I'd certainly ask to see the document with the loan amount, just to be safe. While Nora and Ken high-fived, Tom turned pale. Foreseeing the future but helpless to change it. I patted Tom's back consolingly. What can you do? One has to take responsibility for their words. After Ken left, I started packing in my room when Tom came in.
What should I do?
Caught between his daughter and wife, Tom was at a loss. Glancing at him briefly, then focusing back on my packing, I replied.
Just do what you think is best.
I added, but
personally, I can't live with Nora anymore. She's too selfish.
I truly thought Tom should do what he liked. If he stayed and wanted to support Nora, she and Ken could probably pay the house loan. Not just them, but with Tom's income, all three could manage. If Tom thought that was best, then so be it. I opposed the idea, but once the ownership changed to Nora, it wasn't my concern anymore. Over a few months, I found a new house and changed the house ownership to Nora. Meanwhile, Tom came to my room again. Tom sat down formally in front of me, bowed his head, and offered an envelope full of cash.
This is for your consulting fee. I'd like to formally request your services. A request? For what?
Tom replied, for advice on the actions I should take. His expression was just like when he first came to me for business advice. He wanted to truly protect his daughter, and needed guidance on what to do.
I'm embarrassed to admit, but when it comes to family matters, I can't seem to make a calm decision. So, I need an outsider's perspective on the right course of action.
His formal tone indicated his serious commitment.
Are you sure you want to ask me? I might say some harsh things that are hard for a father to hear. Yes, I understand. But if things continue as they are, it's not just bad for her, it's harmful.
He showed his resolve. I straightened up, feeling his determination.
I accept your request.
I suggested that Tom should also move out of the house. And that no matter how much Nora pleaded, he should never give her money. I told him about the incident with John and Nora 3 years ago.
Nora did something that terrible?
Tom was shocked and speechless. Yes.
If things go on like this, Nora will become the worst kind of person. The responsibility lies not only with her but with us too, for raising her this way. That's true. This is a turning point for Nora and us. If we really care about her, we must be prepared to let her hit rock bottom. Tom took my words to heart and nodded. We decided to move out together and buy an apartment, putting it under both our names and sharing the mortgage. It was a 2-bedroom apartment a bit far from the station. Cheaper and with a shorter loan period than our previous house. Perfect for the two of us. But within a month, Nora and Ken burst in, furious.
"What's this about a $12,000 monthly mortgage payment?"
Nora yelled as she entered. Ken, confrontational, demanded, "Explain yourselves." "Well, that's the amount we've always paid." "Don't lie." Nora slammed the table.
"Where would you get that kind of money?"
"Whether you believe it or not, the bill says so. We need you to pay it as a matter of fact."
"What?"
Nora turned to Tom, pointing at me.
"Dad! Break up with this woman right now!"
Nora demanded. Tom, without a word, solemnly shook his head.
"What?"
Nora was taken aback, trembling in disbelief.
"I'll have nowhere to live if this continues."
She tried to sway Tom with her tears.
"What should I do, Dad?"
Clearly, she was convinced that Tom would give in and provide financial support. However, Tom firmly refused. "The house is in your name now, Nora. It's your responsibility for not checking the payment amount." This was probably the first time Tom had been so distant with Nora. He had always tried to fulfill his role as a father. "You're an adult now. Everything you do, good or bad, comes back to you."
"I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to my dad." "Right, Dad?"
Nora turned to Tom with a forced smile, which quickly faltered as she saw his unyielding expression.
"Wait, what's wrong, Dad?"
Her face turned to despair. Ken, further cornering Nora, added,
"I knew something was off. Such a nice house for only $1,200 a month. We've been tricked."
Glaring at Nora, he accused.
"Are you some kind of marriage scammer?" "No, that's not."
Shocked by Ken's words, Nora's tears flowed.
"I'm calling off the engagement."
Ken stormed out, leaving Nora alone.
"This is all your fault."
Nora's anger irrationally turned towards me. "What are you going to do about this?" She lunged at me, but Tom intervened.
"Dad! I won't be demanding anymore, just..."
As she clung to his arm, Tom pushed her hand away. "This is the house you took from your mother. You figure it out."
"Ugh, this woman."
Nora must have been deeply frustrated. She wiped her tears with her sleeve, viewing me as the enemy until the end.
"You're not my mother,"
she declared and left our apartment. Unable to pay the $120,000 mortgage, Nora was forced to sell the house as agreed. But setting a high price, the sale dragged on, increasing the mortgage debt. Panicked, Nora lowered the price to what the real estate agent suggested and finally sold the house. The house sold for less than the remaining mortgage, so I hired a lawyer to ensure Nora paid according to the pledge she had signed. I had recorded our conversation on my phone when she agreed to pay, so the claim against Nora went smoothly. Whether she could pay easily was another matter. After breaking up with Ken, Nora moved into a rental apartment and started paying me monthly. But it was clear that maintaining her lifestyle while making these payments was going to be a stretch. Soon enough, she seemed to be struggling financially. One day, we had guests at our home. We were entertaining a young couple who had come to announce their engagement, chatting in the living room with Tom. Suddenly, the doorbell rang loudly, and Nora barged in uninvited. Despite being told we had guests, she stormed into the living room, ignoring the couple and pleading desperately with Tom.
"Dad, Yvonne, I'm at my limit. I couldn't even make my utility payments yesterday."
At 27, she sat on the living room floor, crying loudly. Tom and I exchanged glances, and the young couple looked bewildered.
"All my utilities will be cut off."
Nora sobbed like a child. The young man from the couple spoke up. "If it's just a missed payment, they won't cut off your utilities right away.
Recognizing the voice, Nora stopped crying and slowly looked up.
John?
Long time no see, Nora, John said with a gentle smile. Nora, perhaps feeling nostalgic or reassured, started crying again. We managed to get her seated in a chair.
Why is John here?
She asked through tears. I began explaining.
Well, 3 years ago, I was in the same cafe where you and John were breaking up.
What?
It was just a coincidence. It's thanks to Yvonne that I am where I am today.
Nora sat there, mouth agape. She was not fully understanding. But I continued.
Remember how you used to ask where I got all my money from? Actually, I've been working as a freelance consultant and doing affiliate marketing.
I told her I started before marrying Tom and that my income was quite substantial.
More than your father.
What? Nora gasped in shock, biting her lower lip in frustration.
Why didn't you tell me? You must have found it funny, watching me make a fool of myself.
Yes, I did. I replied honestly. I didn't actually find Nora's situation funny, but I guess that's what she thought of herself now.
Remember? Back then, I didn't have much money, right? Yvonne told me about some work-from-home side jobs.
Luckily, his company allowed side jobs. I had suggested affiliate marketing through blogging and web writing. Affiliate marketing takes time to generate income, but once it starts, it can lead to significant earnings. As for web writing, many people write emails and are exposed to web content regularly. John, who also read novels in his spare time while caregiving, seemed a good fit for trying his hand at scenario writing.
3 years since I started, and thanks to persisting, my income has increased a lot.
John said, smiling. Enough to get married.
Oh, the tables have turned since then.
I mused. It's strange how things work out. The one who used to complain about not being treated to dinner was now struggling with utility bills, while the one who asked for more time to pay was now well off. All in just 3 years. Tomorrow's troubles are today's worries. A phrase that Nora might be feeling the most right now.
Now, I could take you out to dinner anytime, buy you clothes, bags, anything you want.
John said gently. Nora clutched his hand tightly.
Then, John, let's start over, be together again.
Suddenly, John's expression turned cold. He brushed off Nora's hand.
That's why it won't work with you.
What? Nora looked shocked. John looked down on her with disgust.
I have money now, but I'm still taking care of my parents.
Can you help?
Are you willing to change my parents' diapers?
What?
No, why should I do that?
See, John said softly, placing his hand on the back of his fiancée seated next to him.
She said she'd help me with the caregiving.
John smiled at his fiancée.
I don't expect anyone I date to help with my parents' care, but it shows the character of both women.
I commented. John nodded, agreeing.
Yes, it felt like a difference in human quality to me.
Nora banged the table in frustration.
Enough! I didn't come here to be ridiculed.
Her voice trembled, holding back tears.
Right, we were talking about your utility bills.
John said casually. He explained to Nora that missing a direct debit doesn't lead to immediate service termination.
They'll send you a bill, and they always give notice before stopping services. They tell you when you need to pay by to avoid disconnection.
Oh, really? Even after being helped, Nora couldn't muster a word of thanks. John smiled at her.
I'm glad my embarrassing experience could be of help to Nora. Do your best to manage the payments on your own.
He added, his words laced with sarcasm, which even Nora seemed to pick up on. John's and Tom's words made Nora cry even harder. Amidst everyone's stares, she lamented, why?
Why won't anyone help me?
The answer was something she'd have to realize herself. No matter what anyone said, she wouldn't notice. John stopped his fiancée from offering a handkerchief to Nora. He was silently shaking his head. Nora would likely reject it. And it would only make his fiancée feel bad.
We all watched Nora cry louder, feeling pity but remaining silent. Eventually, Nora moved from her luxurious apartment to a simpler two-bedroom apartment. She started living more modestly. Not buying branded items anymore. Probably because she couldn't afford them. She used the bags and clothes Tom had bought her in the past more carefully now. Despite her complaints about cockroaches and thin walls, she diligently paid back the money each month. Tom, feeling sorry for her, still chose not to offer any financial help, continuing to watch over her. I believe that being strict can also be a form of parental love. Not indulging in misplaced sympathy or pity can actually benefit Nora. John and his fiancée got married successfully. It was touching to see his parents, attending in wheelchairs, smiling happily. As for me, I'm still happily living with Tom. Continuing my work as a consultant. Accepting criticism and improving oneself is essential. This humble and flexible approach can expand both companies and individuals. I'm living by this belief every day, striving to continue in the same vein. You totally fooled me, Mary. I never expected you to be infertile. I don't need a wife who can't have kids. So, I'm gonna remarry a new wife. This is what my husband Sean suddenly blurted out as he took me to his parents' house over the weekend. I thought only my mother-in-law would be there today, but there was a young woman next to Sean. He brought this so-called new wife to his parents' house. As unbelievable as that was, the woman said something even more outrageous. Hello, nice to meet you. I'm Lynn. Actually, I'm pregnant. She didn't seem at all remorseful. And Sean was just grinning. The situation was truly unbelievable. My mother-in-law, who had been watching us, spoke up. So, Mary, would you please get a divorce quickly? Don't make my son suffer any longer. She was on Sean's side. That's when I retorted. Oh? You want a divorce right away? But we're already divorced? What? Already divorced? Are you just being a sore loser? Sean said mockingly. But this wasn't about being a sore loser. I already knew everything. And that Sean had overlooked something critical. I had to make him regret it for the rest of his life. I'll definitely make him pay. Sean, you forgot, didn't you? Every time I showed a hint of defiance, you threatened me with divorce papers, saying if I didn't obey, it's over. I reflected on that. A good wife wouldn't go against her husband's wishes. So, as you wanted, I consulted with a lawyer about the divorce process the other day. Your part was already filled out on the paper, so it's in process. What? When did you do that? You were always indecisive and under my thumb. Sean stammered, biting his nails. That was a habit he had when anxious, dating back to when we were dating. Lynn gently put her hand on his shoulder, turning to him with a smile like a goddess. Suddenly, Sean's face brightened, and he leaned back towards me. Well, you finally did something right. Now I don't have to bother going out to file them. This makes me officially single. I'll remarry Lynn right away. Lynn's eyes welled up, and she blinked excitedly. I almost laughed through my nose at that. Then my mother-in-law stepped forward, arms crossed, and snorted. For someone who can't have kids and is useless, you did something right. So, can you pack your stuff and leave? I always thought you were out of Sean's league. He's an elite worker at a well-known large company. Someone plain and mediocre like you is no match for him, like comparing chalk and cheese. She started bragging about Sean without being asked. How many times have I heard this since we got married? The first time, I had to listen for over an hour. Her nagging was no less than Sean's. I wish this mother and son wouldn't compete in such matters. Just the other day, the CEO personally praised him. He's definitely on the fast track now. That's my Sean. So, don't show your face to us again. It feels refreshing to cut ties with a failure like you. Like mother, like son, huh? As my mother-in-law's chatter finally wound down, I couldn't help but burst into laughter. My mother-in-law, Sean, and Lynn all stared with their mouths agape. Hey, Mary. Has the shock made your brain useless too? Come on, get a grip. It's embarrassing for me if people find out I was married to someone crazy, even for a short while. Relax. The ones with the messed up heads are you guys. Sean and your mom are so good at finding faults in others but totally blind to secrets. Let me enlighten you. Finally, Sean looked puzzled. Good, he should be more interested. This is where it gets interesting. Lynn is already married, you know. Silence enveloped the room. Sean was the first to laugh. What a story. You disappoint me, Mary. I thought you were smarter than this. Yeah, it's foolish to make up such obvious lies when you're desperate and out of options. It's fitting for you, I guess. Lynn, feeling victorious, wrapped her arms around Sean's arm and snuggled up to him. I could see Sean's nostrils flare at the soft touch of her skin. It was utterly revolting. She's just jealous because she's infertile. Don't be too hard on her. It's pitiful, isn't it? She couldn't have kids and was dumped by her beloved. Oh, Lynn. How compassionate you are. Carrying new life in you and still caring for such a spiteful woman. Marrying you is the greatest joy of my life. What a noble love between a man and a woman. This is what an ideal couple looks like. Mary, you should see this love that you'll never have. You should learn from Lynn. Sean dabbed his eyes, and my mother-in-law, who had somehow produced a frilly lace handkerchief, was wiping her tears. Cheap tears, I thought, half closing my eyes as I watched them. I don't know what you're getting emotional about, but I'm not interested in dragging this farce out. Take a look at this. What's this? Interrupting our moment with some piece of paper. What's the big deal about this? What's wrong, Lynn? Why have you frozen up? What does this paper say, male infertility? What? What does that mean? Let me see. Where had the image of the three of them, who until just moments ago were huddled together in harmony, gone? The trio was now fighting over a single sheet of paper. The paper crumpled from their handling now. This paper, as you can see, is an infertility test result. The reason Sean and I couldn't have kids wasn't because of me, but Sean. I had asked my husband to cooperate with me when I started infertility treatments. Such things are meaningful only when done together as a couple. But Sean outright refused to cooperate, blaming me for the infertility. I managed to get a sample from him through various means and submitted it right away. The results are as you see. I waved another piece of paper in my hand as I explained. It was my test result. It read no issues. The three of them turned pale. Why didn't you say anything until now? You should have told me right away when you found out. That's why you're a failure. Don't take it out on me because you're shocked. I never wanted to reveal it in front of others. But you made me. I shook my head in a what-can-you-do manner. Right when the results came, you started working overtime, going out, ignoring my calls and emails. How was I supposed to tell someone who's hardly ever home? Did you know about Lynn from the beginning? My mother-in-law asked, looking terrified, so I smiled kindly. Yes, of course. Even a fool would notice when you suddenly stop coming home. Once I started suspecting, I had to investigate thoroughly. It was interesting, like a drama, uncovering all the hidden facts. My mother-in-law collapsed weakly onto the floor. My husband Sean stood motionless, staring at me like a statue, mouth agape. I kept a smile on my face and clapped my hands together loudly. Well, no one truth has come to light. Let's summarize. First, Sean and your mom thought I was infertile. During this time, Sean's mistress, Lynn, got pregnant. Both of you were overjoyed and pressured me to divorce, welcoming Lynn as the new wife. I walked slowly around the room while talking. Every time my slippers scraped against the floor, I could tell each of them held their breath. However, now it's revealed that Sean is infertile. Here's the question. If Sean is infertile, whose baby is Lynn carrying? Sean and his mother silently turned to look at Lynn. Her eyes, which were bright and gleaming when I first arrived, now lost their luster, looking flat and dull. A bead of sweat trickled down Lynn's forehead. Her lips, tightly pressed, trembled slightly, and her nervously tapping fingers betrayed her composed posture. My mouth curled up slightly, admitting to myself that I felt a small sense of victory. But Lynn, capable of adultery, was different. Her mind must be wired differently from ordinary people. In a not-so-normal way. Lynn forced a smile as wide as possible. "Where's the proof that this test result is real?" Sean and his mother turned to me, startled. Perhaps still having the energy to fight back. What a waste of energy. Lynn stood up straighter, puffing out her chest, confronting me confidently. "The core of your claim is that piece of paper saying Sean is infertile, right? It's not directly from a doctor, so it could be considered fake, couldn't it? If Sean's infertility is denied, then the child in my belly is genuinely mine and Sean's. You'll take responsibility for accusing me of being married." I thought to myself, if witches existed, they would laugh like this. Narrowing their eyes into crescents and smiling unnaturally with their bright white teeth. Lynn must have deceived and trapped people before. No choice then. I shrugged, and Lynn's smile deepened clearly. Sean and his mother's eyes lit up with hope. I bent down. All three leaned forward in anticipation. Then I reached out my hand. There was a small card on the flooring. I picked it up and handed it to Lynn with a smile. It must have fallen out when I walked around the room. Lynn looked puzzled, but her face changed as soon as she turned it over and saw the written side. "Lynn, what's wrong? You're as pale as a ghost. Are you feeling unwell?" Sean asked with concern. Without a word, Lynn showed him the card. It read John Doe. Sean fell back in shock. His face rapidly turned pale. "Hey, what's going on here?" My mother-in-law asked, still not grasping the significance of the name on the card, which she almost snatched from Sean's hand. "FCU Director John Doe. Isn't FCU where Sean works? What's Lynn's connection with the company's president?" "You're asking me to spell out something you already know? You really want to escape reality, don't you? Well, I'll make it clear for you. John Doe is Lynn's husband." My mother-in-law fell to her knees with force. Her whole body shook violently. "No, this can't be true. Sean having an affair with the president's wife. If this gets out, Sean will. I know, we just won't tell anyone." She jumped up, grabbed me by the collar. I was a bit taken aback by her sudden aggression. "Mary, if you want alimony, I'll pay it. Just keep this a secret between us." "Oh, I've already reported the affair." "What did you say? You failed." "No, it can't be true. It has to be a lie. This can't be happening, it just can't." The room erupted into chaos. I looked towards the window. It was slightly open. This must be echoing throughout the neighborhood. I smirked to myself. "Wait. Yes, John Doe is my husband, but the baby in my belly." Lynn was still trying to cover her lies, even now. Her face was covered in sweat, her makeup a mess. I cut her off mid-sentence, closing off her last escape route. "It's Mr. Doe's child, right? No mistake about it. It's been confirmed with Mr. Doe's cooperation." "How did you do it? I don't remember anything." "Didn't Mr. Doe ask you to give a blood sample?" "He did say something about checking my health just to be safe." Lynn looked confused. The radiant impression she had when she first entered was gone, and she seemed to have aged 10 years in just a short time. Nowadays, they can do prenatal paternity tests with the mother's blood and the father's buccal cells. With these, paternity can be confirmed before birth. "No way! You prepared all that?" Finally, Lynn collapsed to the floor. Her neatly combed hair was now disheveled. The three of them were in a state of shock, finally grasping the situation. I stood with my hands on my hips, breathing out in satisfaction. Then Sean started mumbling something. I couldn't make out the words, but his expression wasn't good. I braced myself, ready for battle, as Sean suddenly looked up and yelled. "Are you kidding me? After whispering sweet nothings, it was all lies? What were you thinking, having an affair with someone from your spouse's company? You're so outrageous.
My husband Sean wasn't berating me, but Lynn instead. Lynn, who had been sitting powerlessly, suddenly regained her vigor.
Ever heard the saying, no rose without a thorn? You got a taste of something sweet and took it seriously, silly you.
Lynn retorted with a dismissive tone. Sean's frown deepened.
Oh, are you angry? You've got such high pride for nothing. That's why you're so easy to handle. You never thought you were just being played with, obediently doing as told, just like a pet. What did you say? Who do you think you're talking to?
Lynn finally stood up, advancing to within inches of Sean's face. His slight retreat betrayed the intensity of her gaze.
Listen, it's because of your failure that our affair was exposed. Who are you glaring at? I'm the wife of the president, you know? My sublime pleasure was ruined by a foolish employee like you, and I'm very angry.
Sean took a few steps back and forced a dry smile.
So, that's your true nature.
I see it now. He walked past Lynn and stood in front of me, then suddenly grabbed my hand.
Mary, I've finally seen the light. It was a detour, but I've found true love.
You're the only one for me. Suddenly, his lips were hurtling towards mine at an alarming speed. Instinctively feeling terror, I narrowly dodged. Without hesitation, I kicked him in the groin and backed away to the corner of the room. My back was instantly soaked with sweat. Sean groaned in pain but kept calling my name. My mother-in-law, hearing the words true love, sparkled with excitement, fervently defending Sean's plea for reconciliation.
Sean, realizing your true feelings is admirable. Just one more push, Mary. There's no man more elite and wonderful than Sean.
I reached my limit. I turned to my mother-in-law, who was sending an adoring gaze at her son.
You both said it earlier. A person who can't have children is useless, right? I don't think that way, but by that definition, Sean is useless, isn't he?
Her sparkling eyes dimmed instantly. She awkwardly lowered her gaze and shrunk in on herself. That should stop her fanciful talk. As for Sean, he was frozen solid. Probably the first time anyone's ever called him useless. He must have always been praised by everyone, especially adults, for being capable. But that's not enough. It's about how and where you apply those skills. It depends on one's morals. It seems Sean lacked those from the start. I looked at him one last time, making sure to keep a safe distance.
You were scolding Lynn for deceiving you, but you deceived me too, so you're not in a position to complain. What goes around comes around.
My icy gaze brought Sean back to reality. He reached out his hand desperately, still in pain, but I had no intention of taking it. It was too late for everything.
Do you understand now how it feels to be called useless?
As I gave my husband Sean a full-faced smile, he stumbled but came to me, apologizing.
I'm sorry, Mary. It was all my fault. Can you forgive me just this once? I promise to change. They say cheating is a disease, right? It's not that easy to cure. Why would I, now a stranger to you, patiently deal with such an illness?
With those words, I finally left my in-laws' house, without looking back once. Afterward, Sean faced demands for compensation from both me and the company president and was fired from his job for ethical reasons. For a while, he maintained his elite pride and behaved arrogantly at home as if nothing had changed. However, unable to manage household chores and missing my regular, disciplined lifestyle, his life quickly turned into a mess. He was constantly at odds with his once close mother. After the president spread the word about Sean's actions within the industry, his job search went nowhere. His debts kept increasing, and eventually, he came to me for help again. Of course, I flatly refused. Now, he's barely making ends meet by juggling low-paying part-time jobs just to pay off his debts. As for Lynn, the president didn't blame her excessively during her pregnancy, not wanting anything to happen to the baby. So, she deluded herself into thinking she was forgiven.
She lived a lavish life as the president's wife, but that only lasted until the baby was born. Soon after the birth, the president took the baby away, leaving Lynn with plans to divorce and evict her as soon as she recovered. At night, hysterical cries could be heard from her house. Meanwhile, I found a job and started a comfortable life living alone. A life without anyone attacking me was utterly stress-free. Eventually, I remarried someone I met through work. The following year, I joyfully embraced my long-awaited child. The tiny life was more adorable than I could have imagined, and I vowed to dedicate everything to make this child happy.
Get out of here, you fake mother!
The words blindsided me, leaving me utterly shocked. After 13 years of loving Sophia as my own daughter, hearing such words from her seemed inevitable, yet it stung. Her desperate expression and the way she pointed at me made it clear she wanted nothing more than for me to leave. Seeing that look on her face, I couldn't even ask why. I decided to silently comply and leave. Dodging the concerned glances of those around me, I walked away slowly. I found a bench just outside the venue and sat down quietly. Mulling over the words Sophia had hurled at me, my shoulders slumped in defeat. How had it come to this? Reflecting deeply, I realized I hadn't been there for her when it truly mattered. Since I'm not her biological mother, Sophia's words were justified. As I was about to give up hope, a jolt of shock went through me. Just as I was about to turn around, thinking something had happened, I heard Sophia's voice, on the verge of tears.
Sorry. The truth is.
The shocking revelation that followed left me at a loss for words. My name is Amelia Smith, a 48-year-old CEO. I have a daughter named Sophia, though she is not my biological child. When I married her father, Ethan, who had been her sole parent, Sophia became my daughter. I met Ethan when I was still an employee. One day after work, as I was doing some grocery shopping, I came across someone who had dropped their wallet. It was Ethan, and I quickly picked it up and called out to him. "Excuse me, you dropped your wallet."
"Ah, yes. Thank you so much."
He took it back from me with a genuine smile and invited me for tea as a thanks. Despite holding my shopping bags, I was charmed by his smile and nodded in agreement. Surprisingly, our time over tea flew by, and it felt wonderful. Ethan, suddenly aware of the time, hurriedly prepared to leave. "Sorry for holding you up. My daughter is waiting for me, so I need to go. But, if it's all right with you, I'd love to chat again." With that, he scribbled his contact information from his planner and left in a rush. As I chuckled to myself about the whirlwind encounter and paid for my groceries, I realized Ethan had already taken care of the bill. It was a memorable way to begin our relationship. After several dates, I got to know more about Ethan. He was a single father. His previous marriage ended because his wife fell ill. He worked tirelessly to provide for Sophia, who was 10 at the time. As I learned more about his life, I found myself drawn to him, and he felt the same way about me. As our relationship deepened, Ethan proposed, and I immediately accepted. However, there were several concerns for me to consider. I had quit my job to pursue a lifelong dream. At the beginning of our relationship, it was the only stable aspect of my life. Ethan, knowing this, still chose to propose to me. During our time together, I would sometimes play with Sophia. She was a bright and energetic girl who thoroughly enjoyed our playtimes. She often hugged me spontaneously, clinging to me fondly. Sophia was outspoken and prone to surprising comments. "Hey, Amelia, when are you and Dad gonna get married?" Out of the blue, Sophia's comment had us staring at each other in surprise. Though I accepted a marriage proposal after such an event, there were naturally obstacles. It was when I had gone to report to my parents about the marriage by myself before greeting them with Ethan. Originally, Ethan was supposed to come with me to say hello, but he ended up having to go on a business trip at the last minute and couldn't make it. Having no other option, I tried to reschedule, but he insisted that I should go first alone. "I'm really sorry. If you go and greet them once on your own, I think it will go more smoothly when I accompany you the next time." So, I hate to ask, but please send my regards to your parents. At the time, I didn't think much of it, but I was strongly opposed at that point. I was unilaterally scolded and my parents were indignant, calling Ethan insincere. However, I understand why my parents were worried. I had just started a dream company of mine, and my income wasn't stable yet. Moreover, while this was my first marriage, Ethan was divorced. And the fact that he had a child meant that their concern was quite predictable. Yet, I was able to convince my parents and somehow got their understanding. When we went for the marriage greeting again, my parents welcomed us warmly. They were my parents, who truly wished for my happiness. A few years had passed since our marriage. Although Sophia was included and the three of us spent such fun times together, things gradually started to fall apart. The cause was on me, but it still made me feel lonely. My work, thankfully, had been going well since I married Ethan. But due to that, I became busy, and when I got home, I was just barely managing to finish the chores. I couldn't create time for Sophia, and maybe that's why we've grown apart emotionally. If so, at least I wish Ethan could make time for Sophia, but I couldn't bring myself to insist on it. I know that Ethan is busy with work as well, and it just doesn't sit right with me to leave everything to him and set myself aside. I tried asking Ethan, but I just got a frown and a lecture. I'm worried about Sophia, too, you know? But work is busy, and you understand that, right? It felt like he was telling me not to blame myself too much, and that made me a bit miffed. This became the cause of a fight, and I was aware that our marital relationship had cooled down. However, instead of fixing it, I escaped into my work. Plus, with Sophia now being in junior high and squarely in the midst of puberty, she wasn't at home often, and the crucial me being absent created a distance between us. When I wake up and say hello in the morning, I get nothing more than a light nod, and I haven't heard her voice for a long time. When she leaves for school, I say, "Have a good day," but she just smiles ambiguously and doesn't respond. By the time Sophia gets home, I'm off to work, and dinner is just something made ahead that she heats up. Moreover, Ethan works late too, so Sophia is probably eating alone. Since I've let such a lifestyle go on, it's only natural that distance has grown between us, given we aren't biologically related. Before marrying Ethan, we used to have such fun times, but now they're almost non-existent. Ethan, despite being Sophia's biological dad, seems disinterested and his responses are curt. About my own work and Ethan's work. I've tried discussing how Sophia might be sad about my business demands and Ethan's work situation, but I only get laughter in response. And still, he comes home late from work and doesn't try to engage with anything at home or with Sophia. Thinking it's not good for Sophia for this to continue, I tried my best to make time for her. To reduce the time I spent at the company, I even tried bringing work home. If there was a school event, I tried to adjust my work schedule to make myself available. Sadly, unexpected appointments or unavoidably important tasks meant that things didn't always go as planned. Maybe Sophia too grew tired of my attempts. The emotional distance that was already there might have widened further. Now, she leaves for school while I'm still getting ready in the morning, and at night, she returns to her room before I get back. She began avoiding me, so I couldn't be involved in things like parent-teacher meeting, school festivals, or her graduation ceremonies. It stayed this way even as Sophia became a high schooler. By the time my company settled down, Sophia was already in college and about ready to graduate. During those disheartening times, finally, as Sophia was graduating from college, she approached me on her own accord. "Mom, I have something I want to talk to you about." Hearing Sophia's voice after such a long time nearly moved me to tears. However, I couldn't listen to her story if I was crying, so I mustered a smile and faced her. "What's up, sweetie? You know you can tell me anything about what's going on with you." Despite everything that happened before and knowing that her trust might be shaky, I wanted to do anything for Sophia's sake. While I was half excited and half scared about what she would say next, Sophia dropped a bombshell. "Mom, I want to get married. There's someone I love." I felt as if time had stopped, I certainly wasn't expecting to hear such news. Even though I knew Sophia was at that age, the thought of her having a boyfriend had never crossed my mind. I was totally unprepared for marriage talks instead of simply hearing about a boyfriend. Seeing the worried look on Sophia's face brought me back to reality, and from there, we had a long, deep conversation. I caught up on all the things I hadn't been able to hear before, all the memories Sophia could recall. I listened intently to her hardships, as well as the happy and joyful things she experienced. After hearing everything, even about her fiancé, I eagerly offered to help out. "Sophia, let me help you since I haven't been able to do much up until now. Is the venue for the wedding decided? Do you have a place to live after the wedding? Tell me if there's anything you're unsure about or anxious over. I'll make sure it's a wonderful ceremony." When I said this, Sophia broke down in tears. Embracing Sophia as she nodded repeatedly through her tears, I conveyed my sincerest congratulations from the bottom of my heart. From that point on, I was busier than when I had started my company. I juggled work while helping with the wedding preparations, and I even met her fiancé at her introduction. The fiancé seemed like a very sincere and kind person, and upon first sight, I felt a deep sense of relief. I thought that he would love Sophia abundantly, making up for the times she felt lonely. As the preparations progressed, I learned that there was supposed to be a family introduction. But it seemed that it was called off, and I never got the chance to greet the fiancé's parents. However, I didn't worry too much since I assumed we would meet properly on the wedding day. On the day of the wedding, I had some unavoidable work and arrived late to the venue, only to be told I was not allowed in as I was an outsider. Protesting desperately, I claimed to be the mother of the bride, Sophia. However, they told me that her mother was already there, and I was left utterly confused. Just when I thought I'd be turned away at the door, Sophia, dressed in the gown we had chosen together, ran up to me. Just as I thought I would finally be let in, a shocking statement hit my ears. "Fake mother, leave immediately." Stunned by those words suddenly thrown at me, I realized it was not surprising. Sophia, whom I had cherished as my own daughter for 13 years, was telling me this. It was inevitable. Seeing Sophia's desperate expression, pointing at me, indicating she wanted me out no matter what, I resolved to silently comply without asking for a reason. Navigating through the sympathetic gazes of the bystanders, I slowly left the scene. Feeling utterly shocked, I walked on shaky legs until I found myself outside the premises of the wedding venue. How I got there was a blur, but more pressing was the feeling of utter desolation. My spine was cold, my mood was heavy, sweat broke out, and I felt miserable. With these feelings weighing me down, I found a bench and decided to take a rest. Until not long ago, it felt like all the past was a lie, and I had been spending time with Sophia. And I had thought I was finally going to be part of a significant event in Sophia's life. The words "fake mother" that Sophia hurled at me were stuck in my head and wouldn't budge. Indeed, I wasn't Sophia's real mother. A distance had grown between us since middle school, and I had used work as an excuse not to get deeply involved. Was it because we had misunderstood each other for so long? Sophia had approached me upon her marriage, and I wondered where I had gone wrong. Sitting on the bench, these thoughts went around and around in my head. There was still time before Sophia's ceremony began. Should I try to talk to her again? Or is it better to just go home now? I'd love to catch a glimpse of Sophia, even from a distance, just to see her looking happy and smiling. But maybe that's not going to happen. From a little ways off, I could hear the sound of a bus. Looking around, I realized that the bench I was sitting on was at a bus stop. Perfect. I'll just get on this bus and head home. Just as I was about to stand up, a jolt went through my back. Turning around, thinking something had happened, I heard Sophia's voice, sounding like she was about to cry. "I'm sorry. Actually..." The shocking truth I heard next left me speechless for a while. "I'm really sorry about earlier. I wasn't planning on saying anything, but when I saw your face, I just couldn't hold it in. It'll be a bit long, but can you hear me out?" "Of course, sweetheart.
You've been holding it in for so long. I'm so sorry, I didn't notice. Please, tell me everything. As I said this, Sophia started to speak slowly. What she told me was just as shocking as the words she'd said before, and all I could do was listen. The first thing she talked about was the meeting of both families that had been cancelled. Initially, she'd been told they would inform her when it was scheduled, but it ended up not happening. However, apparently, the meeting did happen, and Sophia was waiting with her fiancé's family for us. Ethan arrived a bit late and brought with him a woman who looked familiar. It turned out to be Amiri, his ex-wife, and naturally, both Sophia and her fiancé were very surprised. But Ethan hurried through the meeting, and before they knew it, it was over. It seems that the fiancé's parents recognized Amiri as the mother, and things continued unresolved until today. In addition, Sophia told me other astonishing things about Ethan. They used to live as a family of 3, but Amiri incurred debts, making their life difficult. Unable to endure such a life, Ethan divorced Amiri, taking Sophia with him. Unable to make ends meet on his own, he wanted to find someone who could financially support Sophia. That person turned out to be me. However, soon after marrying me, Ethan began dating Amiri again behind my back. Then I was busy with the new company. At that time, Sophia, being only 10, didn't understand the situation. But as she grew into her teens, she became aware of the truth and felt terribly guilty. She was distant because she couldn't find the courage to tell me what was going on. Sophia apologized, crying, and explained much more. I couldn't catch up with my head, but I couldn't help feeling sorry for Sophia, who had been feeling crushed until now. Thinking about how Sophia suffered because of the selfish actions of Ethan and Amiri made me incredibly angry. Why should Sophia have to suffer so much instead of them? When I thought of that, I felt very painful. When she finished, I decided to accept everything for now. It's not that I had no thoughts on the matter, but those weren't directed at Sophia. If I vented now, that would only make Sophia blame herself even more. I cupped Sophia's tear-streaked cheeks in my hands and smiled warmly at her. I'm sorry for not realizing anything until now. But I'm really glad you told me. Thank you for trusting me despite the pain you've been through. At my words, Sophia's eyes welled up and she started to cry uncontrollably. The bus had left without us, and I held Sophia gently, waiting for her tears to abate. When she finally calmed down, I asked her one question. Sophia, why did you say those things to me at that time?
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. Hey, calm down, okay? I'm not blaming you. I heard everything you just told me, but I was just wondering why you said what you did. Hearing this, Sophia seemed relieved and took a deep breath. But then her face hardened, and she shared the true intent behind her words at that time. Like at the family meeting, she was at the venue before you, Mom. She's not my mother anymore, but acts like she owns the place, so nobody questions her. It's partly my fault, but you didn't know about the meeting, and I didn't want you to see her. I panicked. I chose the worst possible way to handle it. I'm so sorry. It's all right. Don't worry about it. It's okay, I'm not angry. I replied, soothing Sophia with a gentle stroke on her back. Even though today should be a day of celebration, I couldn't forgive Ethan and Amiri for putting my daughter through this. While suppressing the anger welling within me, I made sure Sophia got to the dressing room. I checked the time on my smartphone, and there was still a while before the ceremony started. Sophia would have time to stop crying and reapply her makeup. Her dress might have gotten a bit dirty, but it would be cleaned in no time. Right now, my focus was on dealing with Ethan and Amiri, who were likely looking forward to enjoying the wedding at the venue. I was filled with those thoughts. As I was considering what to do about the two, it seemed that the ceremony had ended. The reception was about to start, and I thought this was my chance, so I made my way into the venue. Earlier, when I had dropped Sophia off at the dressing room, I made sure the venue staff understood I was the real mother. This time I was let in without dispute. Upon entering, I saw Ethan and who I assumed was Amiri and started walking towards them.
Noticing me, Aithan went pale and hurried over.
What's going on? You're late. The ceremony is already over. Was work holding you up? You could have at least called. Isn't there something else you should be saying? Of course, I'd also like to know why a stranger is sitting in the seat reserved for the bride's parents.
I said, my voice tense at Aithan's clumsy words, loud enough for the groom's parents and the entire venue to hear. The murmurs began, and people started glancing over curiously. With their attention, I explained the situation to the audience. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today at my daughter's wedding reception. But as you've overheard, that woman making herself comfortable is no longer Sophia's mother. She is actually Aithan's ex-wife from 13 years ago, and she is still involved with my husband. And terrifyingly, I was nearly prevented from witnessing my daughter's happiest day. The room erupted in murmurs. Now the gazes turned to Aithan and Amiri, who began to stammer a defense.
That's nonsense. I was waiting for you to come. But since you weren't showing up, I didn't think it was right to have the mother's seat empty, so I asked her. That's all. Yeah, that's right. If you claim to be her mother, why haven't you shown your face until now? They say you're busy with work. How could you not make time for your own daughter's big day?
Amiri joined in, eliciting more noise from the crowd. This probably made them think that I'd neglected my daughter for work. But I had my say. Unfortunately, my work ended before the ceremony began. It's my daughter's big day, of course I'd planned to be on time. But when I arrived at the venue, I was almost turned away at the gate. What was the reason again? Oh right, they said the mother had already arrived, asking who I was exactly. You impersonated Sophia's mother to keep me out, didn't you?
You didn't show up. I was just asked to pretend to be the mother. It's not my fault.
Amiri protested, which was my cue to argue further, but then the doors burst open, and Sophia strode in with forceful steps.
Stop lying. The one telling lies here is you. Don't ruin my wedding any further.
The room buzzed at Sophia's declaration. She stood firmly in front of me, then turned to face Aithan and Amiri.
You divorced my dad when I was 10. You hadn't shown your face once since then, but then you casually showed up at the family meeting. Why did you tell my future in-laws that you are my mother?
Sophia then turned to apologize to her in-laws.
I'm terribly sorry for being silent till now. To take responsibility for everything, the engagement will be annulled. And I assure you, any expenses will be fully reimbursed. Please forgive us. Wait a minute, you're calling off the wedding? Don't make such a decision lightly, Sophia.
Aithan, suddenly arguing against the cancellation, appeared genuinely fretful. Even Amiri was nodding seriously beside him. Looking at Sophia's face for clarity, even she seemed confused and distressed.
Your fiancé is wealthy, isn't he? This means we can benefit too, right? Then, your real mother can pay off her debts and come back. Isn't that a dream come true?
The crowd's frowns deepened at Aithan's justification. Was this his plan all along, marrying me for financial gain? No, Sophia chose her own partner, so it couldn't have been the plan from the start. But his participation with Amiri in the family meeting under the pretense that she was the mother meant exactly that. If they convinced the in-laws that Amiri was the mother, they might be persuaded to offer financial help. They were probably aiming for such an outcome with their actions, but blurting it out here, what were they thinking? It seemed Amiri had the same thought and, in a panic, she began yanking on Aithan's arm and scolding him. I couldn't hear what she said, but Aithan instantly paled, covering his mouth and looking back at us. But it was too late to put on an act. The in-laws were furious. What ensued was a heated argument between Aithan, Amiri, and the in-laws.
I'm her real mother. I'm the one who bore her and brought her into this world.
Her claim was countered by the mother-in-law. She doesn't have your temperament, which is probably for the best since her upbringing was superior.
She is my child. Amelia has been too busy with her work to bother much with Sophia.
Sophia immediately retorted. I've been avoiding you because I felt so guilty about how shamefully you were behaving, Dad. I consider Amelia my real mom, and I don't want to claim you, pointing at Amiri, as my mother. She said this with a definitive shake of her head, pointing her finger at Amiri with clear disdain. This prompted Sophia's prospective father-in-law to interject.
We don't want to be relatives with someone who's just after our money for a wedding.
He spoke with a sharp tone, to which Amiri replied defiantly.
When I introduced myself as her real mother, you accepted it. Therefore, there's nothing wrong, and my claim stands.
She said I need the money to pay off debts. The groom then erupted in anger, his face becoming stern. I only want to be with Sophia. I can't manage the burden of both of you. The situation was getting out of hand until the mother-in-law put an end to it.
We will call off the wedding immediately. This matter is settled, let's disperse.
She declared definitively, leaving us no room to argue, and we had no choice but to comply. Defying Ethan's desperate attempts to cling on, the groom's family returned to the dressing room. Ethan and his group, left behind, glared at me resentfully.
I can't do anything about those looks. You deceived not just me but many others, focusing only on yourselves. As a result, you've caused Sophia nothing but pain, and this consequence is only to be expected.
I told Ethan and Amiri before taking Sophia by the hand to apologize to the groom's family. Upon reaching the dressing room, the groom's family greeted us with evident anger. However, after Sophia and I sincerely apologized, they turned to listen to our side of the story. Thankful, Sophia and I recounted everything, apologizing again. They understood and even sympathized with us. They decided not to leave things as they were and gave Ethan and his group one last chance. Settling matters in the heat of the moment wouldn't be constructive. Although what Sophia and I had said was true, we had another round of listening to Ethan's claims. Shortly after that, we managed, with a little persuasion, to have the venue staff set up a meeting to discuss the issue. The groom's family had said they'd like a calm discussion, but once faced with Ethan and his group, they were uncompromising. First, they asked Ethan to clarify his previous statements, which he had to do. Ethan thanked this as an opportunity and started talking about something different from what he had said earlier, which made things difficult. Admittedly, Amelia has taken good care of Sophia, but surely it's better for her to be with her real mother. If Sophia marries your son, her life will be stable, and then we can use the money to pay back Amiri's debts. The thing is, you mentioned earlier about benefiting from us. Was that your intention, to make use of Sophia to get us to pay for the debts? You're now contradicting yourself. You're just trying to sweet-talk us. Are we right to understand it that way? The in-laws pressed, and Ethan, unable to reply, received a scolding in silence. When Amiri was asked to explain her previous outburst, she also twisted her story. Indeed, I have debts, but it's for medical bills. I have never gambled, please believe that. So if Sophia marries your son, I can repay what I owe, that was my thought. With both Ethan and Amiri saying these things, it was pretty clear they were trying to ingratiate themselves. The in-laws, having given them a chance, were now sitting with furrowed brows in silence. However, Amiri seemed to misinterpret this as an opportunity and continued with her self-centered narrative. I had tried to stay out of it, but her claims were just too self-absorbed to remain silent.
My debts aren't because of gambling. I fell ill shortly after giving birth to Sophia. My health declined rapidly, which led to an extended hospital stay. Of course, medical bills piled up, and I had to raise Sophia. It was incredibly difficult. Why didn't you ask your parents for help if the debt was for postnatal medical expenses? Isn't it common to seek assistance from your own family rather than expecting help from your in-laws?
Now, you'll be taking care of the wedding expenses that have been incurred. Upon hearing this, Amiri immediately turned to me, jerking her chin defiantly toward the mother-in-law and blurted out. See, you're supposed to bear the costs. It was you who messed up the wedding, so you should pay. It's not my fault. I was just asked to do it. The self-serving claims continued from Amiri, and now it was the groom who lost his temper.
Amelia did nothing wrong. In fact, she's an important person whom we will respect if we're to marry again.
Sophia and I were dumbfounded, exchanging glances before looking to the groom's family. They responded by giving us a wink and a warm smile, unlike Amiri, who was none too pleased. Aithan, raising his head with a hint of greed.
Perhaps Amelia can remain as Sophia's mother, but I am, and will always be, her father. It's only natural that I'm included in the family too.
I simply shook my head slowly at Aithan's outburst. To his puzzled expression, I firmly declared, "Don't just say what suits you."
Did you think I wouldn't take
divorce papers half-written? I left them with the lawyer, blocked Aithan's number. I wrote him a letter stating to contact me through the attorney from now on, which I sent along with the papers. Although it took some time, the signed divorce papers eventually made their way back to me. Aithan's section was duly filled in, and all that was left was for me to submit them to the city hall. The lawyer told me it was quite a struggle to get to this point. Aithan had vigorously protested, repeatedly trying to see me and causing quite a bother at the firm. Thanks to the lawyer's patient persuasion, however, Aithan finally relented and signed the documents. Through this process, Aithan's parents, my former in-laws, were informed of the situation. He was then disowned by them and told not to return home. Despite having a wedding bill to pay off, Aithan had indeed fallen on hard times. As for Amiri, of course, she was charged with the wedding costs by the groom's family. My claim for alimony made her situation even more precarious. She had been working part-time, but it wasn't enough to cover her repayments. The necessity to juggle multiple jobs meant that she now had no time for gambling. From my perspective, it seemed like a positive development, but for Amiri, it was a living nightmare. She looked quite worn out, but that was none of my concern. With all the hustle and bustle, finding a new place had been put on the back burner, but then Sophia called. She had arranged a place to stay until I found a new home. It might feel a bit cramped, but I was about to move in with Sophia and her fiancé at their place. I bought some housewarming gifts and made my way to meet them. Everything progressed smoothly from there, and I was able to divorce Aithan successfully. Despite the upheaval, work and Sophia's upcoming marriage were all going well, and we were now preparing for the wedding once again. I never expected to plan 2 weddings because of this turn of events, but someday, I'm sure we'll look back on this and laugh.
Hoping for that to happen, I worked hard at work and wished for Sophia's happiness.